Oh my gosh, we're back. We're back. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. This is another episode of Valiant TLDR, the ultimate deep dive into the history, creators, and behind the scenes stories of Valiant Comics. I'm one of your co-hosts, Carl Choi, the OG Valiant fan of the 90s. I'm kind of reading my way back up so I could get to the next phases of Valiant. We got Mr. Jason Richardson, aka Southern Comic Geek, who's been riding the Valiant wave since day one, and then Will Turner, aka Stingray, as you may know him as, the fresh eyes on discovering this beloved Valiant universe for the very first time. And every week we bring you in-depth reviews. We do some art showcases. And especially something like today, a creator interview, which we're super, super excited about in covering the past, present, and future of the beloved Valiant universe. What's up, fellas?
Not much. Just, coming off that great talk about Turok we had just the other day.
Oh, yeah. Like 2 days ago.
Yeah. Great. So where are we going to go from there?
It's been interesting. This journey has been awesome because I think, personally, Valiant's very nostalgic to me. I felt like it was like my sweet spot when I finally learned how to read English and I actually start understanding what I was reading. So I think there's always a really special place in my heart. And through Jason and a lot of the conversation with him, realizing that there's such a deep community and love for a publishing house. And you just don't see that as much anymore. So it was really cool to even see folks, coming back around. And when we go out to conventions and whatnot, recognize that we've actually been, really revisiting Valiant again. So that's been super fun.
For sure. Did you see Marcus's comment?
Here we are. So we could dive into that. Jason, you want to do the honors today and talk a little bit about our special guest?
Yeah, I can. And Marcus, if you probably have a treasure trove of it, because Marcus has like this treasure trunk of art that he only brings out, when people ask about it. If you remember the cover that Nick found, because he was trying to complete the issue, and he goes, "I only need the cover," and Marcus goes, "Yeah, I got that." So like just random issue. But no, seriously, my introduction to our guest tonight was through Exo Man of War number 14, when the awesome cover of Turok and Exo teaming up, just flipping through the issue, couldn't wait for the next one, and then on into the first part of the Turok ongoing series was my introduction to him. Of course, we'll learn more about his story career as it relates to comic books, toy packaging, and the stuff that he's doing today. So he's certainly no stranger, because he's crossed into DC with his legendary run on Justice League International. Of course, we mentioned Exo and Turok as it relates to Valiant, and Blade as it relates to Marvel. So
don't forget all the books he did with CrossGen.
Oh yeah,
there's a whole story there too. So I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit as well. So
cool. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Bart Sears.
Hey everybody.
Hey Bart.
What was all this at the beginning?
It's a thing. I'm not sure how that started. Jason.
I still don't know what it is, but I do it because they do it.
Well, so the way this all started was when I started my channel years ago, I would do this little thing like I was surprised that we were live. And so when I started teaming up with these guys, they just started doing it too. And I'm like, okay, it's a thing. I did it just to be stupid, but now
we're followers.
Yeah. And now it kind of looks like a live wave, right? Because we're all like, but
I wondered what I missed.
That's what that was. So Bart, just as a bit of recap, even for everyone tuning in today, this thing all started because of just a mutual love for Valiant. And it was last year at Baltimore. We were at Hard Rock, and Jason and I was just geeking out about Valiant, and Newell happened to be like in between us, just crossfires of nerddom, and got just curious afterwards and was like, dude, like, what is all this Valiant stuff about? And next thing you know, we decided to take our conversation on stream. And then we thought it'd be an even greater idea if Newell was fresh eyes to the different Valiant books that we grew up to, so he could reflect on what it is. And so that's how this whole Valiant TLDR came about.
That's cool.
So I think, we're here now. Obviously you played a major part in the history of comics, even in the 90s. But you started your career at DC. So, maybe we could start off with like your as you remember at the time, what that was like as like a wide-eyed artist.
I actually started at Marvel.
Oh, Marvel and then DC, right? Okay.
Yeah, 40 years ago.
Oh.
And, I did 3 jobs for Marvel and realized I wasn't ready to draw comics yet because it was taking me too long. And then I dived into toys, and that's when I started work for Hasbro. And Hasbro is what led me to DC because I designed all the Cops toys.
Oh yeah.
Crime in a future time, and DC came up to talk about doing the comic adaptation, and Kirk Bazigian, who was the marketing director, knew I had done some comics and liked comics, so he asked me to sit in the meeting and told me to bring my portfolio, which I did. And when we were done talking about Cops, I talked to Mr. Andy Helfer, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll give you some work. Don't quit your job, but I'll give you some work." So he called me like the following Monday and offered me issue 4 of Cops. So I went in and quit my job and started working for DC and never stopped.
Nice.
It was pretty crazy.
So if you were to compare your time at Marvel and your time at DC, how would you describe it as you remember it?
In those days, they were really very similar companies to me, anyways. They were very, open, friendly. You could go hang out. You could go sit at a desk and work. It was just, I don't know if collegial is the right word, but it was not corporate at all. And you really, at least I always felt like whatever editor I was working for really, cared about, beyond what was, the work was, how are you living? How are you surviving? What's your, how's your family doing? They're all very, friendly, very family oriented. I mean, I think in my first year at DC, Andy Helfer got me like 7 raises.
Wow.
Nice.
Even though I was under contract, he just, every time I got a job, he put me in for a raise, and just so I could actually survive with a young family drawing comics. So, I loved those companies early on, and Marvel was the same way when I went back. I went back a couple times, but they were very pretty good places to work. I always enjoyed it and felt real comfortable with it. The last couple times I was at DC, it's definitely not the same case. It was just corporate city. You couldn't wander around. Somebody had to be with you all the time. It was really weird. Nobody was in the halls hanging out, joking around. Very strange.
Yeah, you had quite a database on both sides of the world with DC and Marvel. If you look at your body of work, I mean, when you think back, can you believe how many pages you've put out through the last 40 years? My goodness.
And it's kind of tough when I look at. I've got 16 portfolios filled with crap, and I don't really have much of the stuff I've done, so it's kind of odd. Most of the stuff I have is the indie stuff. But
so we're
in and layouts and stuff.
Yeah, we'll spend most of our time on Valiant today, but if you were to look at Marvel and DC, what would be one title on each side that you would say brought you the most joy from your memory?
I have to say, I mean, you can't go wrong with Legends of the Dark Knight, and I was honored to do, I guess, about 5 issues worth of that stuff, which it's Batman, you can't go wrong there. But Justice League Europe was fun. I wish I could do it now because I would have way much more fun than I did when I was starting out, having to figure out, how to do comics. But that was a great one. And then I think for Marvel, it'll always be Blade, even though I hate how it turned out. But I did get to write and create Blade for him, and that was a blast. I love the story I created, and it was just frustrated because they kept pushing the deadline or the decision to have me do it out until it got to such a point that I couldn't even pencil it. So I had to back off to layouts, and then I had to back off to just writing.
Oh no.
Which stunk. I really wanted to draw that book completely, but it was still fun getting to write it.
That's unfortunate.
When you mentioned DC and which title that you would be the most thrilled about, I wondered if you were going to say Eclipso, because of course with Justice League you got a plethora, and I hear other artists talk about team books because you got to worry about the dynamic between all those characters. So how was Eclipso rate up there, or did you like it, hate it?
I did like the Darkness Within, the miniseries, the big summer, bookend 80-page monsters. I love doing that stuff. It started with Invasion, and in both of those instances, and with Justice League Europe, I was really lucky because Keith Giffen wrote them, and he wrote with pictures. He did little layouts for every single page. Oh, wow. And so that immediately, cuts the amount of, I never had to stare at white paper because there was always a starting point. So, I would have never been able to do 8 pages of Invasion a week, which is what I had to do starting out with all those characters if he didn't write that way. And, we then went into Justice League Europe. So, it was a huge help there. And then on the Darkness Within, he did the same thing. So, it takes a lot of that, every time you get a script, you've got to start visualizing, how you're going to break down each page, you're going to add panels, you're going to do this and that. And, so the first thing I do when I get a script is I thumbnail each page, and then I got a starting point. It may change drastically by the time I actually draw the page, but that's my starting point. And with Keith's stuff, it was just always easier, especially when there's a million characters flying around. It took a lot of the angst, I guess, or worry, because, his storytelling was always just simple and solid. So that made it a lot easier. And I did that style in Eclipso because I wanted to do something with line work, but I was sick of feathering and normal rendering. So I thought I'll just do these series of lines that go into, from light to a darker, gradient, because that'll be faster. And of course, it was not in any way faster. Might have been slower when it came to it, but but it was fun. I did enjoy that big, both those big jobs. They were great.
Yeah, Eclipso was actually what I remembered your work on. That was like a heavily 90s promoted title. It was a big launch. I remember it was every.
Yeah, with the
you
best
remember the
gimmick cover ever. Right? Yes, the best gimmick cover ever.
Oh yeah, that's how you get the boys. Oh, there's a little gem. Oh my God, that is mine.
The horrible thing about it, though, as somebody that still collects comics today, and I've got over 13,000 of them, is that the gem messes things up, right? It just sticks it out, and it will make an indentation on the board in front of it. So,
yep. The price you pay for a great gimmick cover, I guess. Right. I didn't enjoy the monthly series as much. I didn't like that it was stuck. I was hoping that it would be right in the DC universe and he'd be facing, DC mainstream characters, but it went into the whole drug lord scenario, which I was tired of even by the 90s. So. It was never fun. And then Valiant courted me.
Yeah, so we'll get into that now. We in our last episode we actually just released a Turok review, and we went through issues 1 through 9. And obviously you had a few issues on Turok, but you also made, I think, the biggest impact on all of our childhood memories, because Turok was such an impactful title, and probably one of the most recognizable covers in the Valiant universe. And so I think it would be cool to rewind and hear the story of how you got hired and how they actually courted you. And so yeah, we'd love to hear that story.
Let's see, the mighty Steve Masarski contacted me and flew me out to San Diego, me and my wife, and took us. We got front row to see BB King, and just wined and dined us the whole time, which was one of my favorite trips to San Diego because I didn't really have to do anything. But and he just put on a full court press. They wanted me to come on and do Exo and Turok, and I jumped. I would been begging DC for years to put me on after Justice League, to put me on a Batman title or something, some big title, but they wanted me on monthlies because at that time I was one of the few guys that could still do a monthly, and so they didn't listen to my hopes and dreams, so I left. I think I still had 8 years on my exclusive at DC when I quit.
Oh, wow.
They never liked me much after that.
So was it DC's exclusivity that you had, or that caused you the Wizard thing where you renamed yourself with the Wizard covers?
Yeah. My middle name's Whitman, and I'm still not sure how I spell it because I spelled it differently on many of those Wizard covers. I never wrote it before. It's just my middle name, and I was a little nervous because I had the exclusive, and I ended up doing so much stuff for Wizard that DC might can me or something. I don't know. And Gareb said, "Why don't we try? You do this Venom cover, and we'll just put another name on it and see if that makes any difference. If I can sell a book with a no-name artist on the cover." And so that was the Wizard #9 Venom cover, and they couldn't print enough of those. That Gareb told me that really put them over the edge from, are we going to make it or not? Oh yeah, we're going to make it now. So that was pretty cool. But it was a Whitman cover, and then I just did it on several after that. DC never ever mentioned Wizard to me ever, so it's kind of ridiculous, but it was fun. And I know for years at the show this weekend, somebody came up, "Were you Whitman?"
Hey, it tricked me too. I mean, I'm looking at the styles and they look similar, but this guy's got a different name. So
I wonder if they're related,
right? I mean, this is before the internet,
Yeah.
So
yeah, if you were to search the Whitman cover, this Venom cover,
Yep,
definitely the first one to pop up.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember a lot of those.
How did you balance the work? Because if you were doing like monthly books at DC, was it like the weekends where you would then just help Gareb with some of the
weekends? And I was always pretty steadily a page a day guy for comics. Unless it was something that really crazy, a lot of perspective and architecture or whatever, which normally if I got one of those pages, I just put a huge figure in front of all that stuff and just drew a little bit of the architecture. But these are the things you learn.
That's cool.
So nights and weekends, was time for, Wizard stuff. Because that was the same time I was doing all the Brutes and Babes. And those took about, a couple days to put together easy. So I was just working all the time. And I had a lot of energy back then, much more than I do now. Working 12 or 14 hours a day was easy back then. Didn't think twice about it. Now it's a lot harder.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
So they lured you over there, and so you started on Exo 14, right? That
Yep.
was the first one.
Yeah, and I made a mistake. I was young and kind of dumb. I hadn't quite figured out what I was capable of and not. I came from the Kubert school mantra of you agree to every job and then you figure out how to do them. You never turn a job down, because if you turned a job down, you never got asked again.
That makes sense.
I agreed to do both Exo and Turok for Valiant. And mostly I agreed to it because they didn't agree to pay me enough per issue that I was comfortable with, and I didn't know how they would sell or what royalties would be or anything like that. So I over agreed to stuff.
Hmm.
When I realized, I mean, if you look at those pages, drawing that exo in that lower left panel there, that probably took me, any of those exos probably took me 3 or 4 hours. I mean, most of these pages were 2 pages just because of that armor. And I couldn't, I've always had a problem with, rushing to get stuff done, and sacrificing quality. And, but what I did wrong with Exo and Turok and Valiant at the time is when I realized I couldn't do what I had committed to, I didn't say anything. I just kind of let the train crash and burn. And, through embarrassment and immaturity and all that stuff. And that's why I did so little Exo and Turok on that first run. And but it taught me how to approach and how to set up contracts in the future. So I learned from it.
Well, at least you didn't burn a bridge, because I know, of course, later on you would come back for the latter part of the Exo run. So.
Yep, a couple years later. So.
And Bart, I gotta say, none of this looked rushed. I mean, you say you were rushed, but this did not look rushed because the amount of details. I mean, I would say
I'd say those are probably 2-page days, except for that last page there. That was probably half a page, but yeah, that spread was probably 3 days, or that splash page.
wow.
Just the gun alone takes forever.
Yeah, especially like a transformation. Yeah, when he's transforming.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Those are the best.
Yeah, Carl, that first page in that issue right there is the one that I missed on Comic Link a few years ago. It's like by far
This one here?
No, the one from issue 14. And so it's got Turok there. And so it's one of the ones that I regret missing out on. But the internet glitched, and Comic Link does not have no do-overs.
No.
Oh.
And so I was going to win this.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Wow, this is beautiful. Are you talking about the cover or the interior?
The interior.
Wow, this page is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the cover is on CAF.
Yes.
And I reached out to the guy and told him, if you want to adopt, or if you ever decide you want to get rid of it, let me know.
I'm sure a handful of us sent the same email to the guy. So what was the order of things, Bart? Like, I'm always curious because obviously this is your first book coming out of Valiant. Like, Did you draw, in sequential? Like, did you draw this Turok? Was this Turok page your very first page?
Yeah.
Did you do the cover first? I mean, curious.
Covers were first. Covers and all the promo stuff. I did a lot of promo art for it, for that and Turok. And the covers, I think I did all the covers first.
Okay.
Before I started, before they had scripts ready for me and all that stuff for Exo and Turok. So I'm pretty sure I did all the covers that I did first, except maybe the cover to Turok 2. I think I did that one, sometime while I was working on number 1, or maybe right when I started number 1 or while I was finishing Exo.
Okay. Now, when you look at these pages, what comes to mind? Because, like, even for me, like, I'll tell you what that comes to mind for me. Like, this page on the right here, yeah. I just remember a fully fresh take to Exo that I've never seen before. And I remember pausing on these pages going, he looks so freaking cool.
Well, it's funny because Masarsky really wanted me on board because all the earlier Valiant stuff had a very heavy shooter bent with kind of 6-panel grids and kind of very straightforward art. No big splashes, really. Certainly no figures leaping off the page or, any real forced perspective kind of stuff. And he was fairly certain they couldn't continue going that way, artistically, that they had to kind of start morphing into, more powerful artwork, I guess.
That's a good way to describe it.
And he just loved my stuff and felt what I could bring to it would really help Valiant, make that change. And I don't think everybody at Valiant was real happy with that, but he was the boss, so.
Well, it's kind of more of along the Image line, right? Because Image was known for its dynamic, art blast, whereas Valiant was more known for its storytelling. And so, this definitely marked a strict departure. Not necessarily a bad thing, especially if they could have kept up the stories along with it.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that we've talked about before, right? Is the kind of quote unquote house style that they developed unintentionally, but this, Bart's work definitely kind of stood out from that. It was definitely different, but also really great.
Great. Now, one of the things that Valiant was known for was the bullpen. Like, did you actually work in the offices with the crew there?
No. I was there a couple of times, and it was nice. It was a pretty good environment too. Like I mentioned, Marvel and DC it was a pretty good environment, but they definitely were more diligent workers in their bullpen. I don't know if it was because it was more open and every office could pretty much look into it, but everybody was, and they did a lot of the guys were in house doing the coloring, so they pumped out a lot of work in their bullpen. It was probably a truer bullpen than Marvel or DC's ever was, but they did a lot of work. I think I met Neil Adams there. I think he was up there one time when I was there. I can't remember, but it was definitely a more working bullpen than I ever saw at DC or Marvel. DC or Marvel's bullpens, in my experience, were mostly production. Guys doing paste ups or put cover dress on, and fixing balloons or changing balloons, doing editor changes after some work was done. But Valiant actually did a lot of the coloring, and a lot of the guys. I mean, Don Perlin worked in house, I believe. And there's always somebody there drawing something.
So diving into XO 15, obviously now you're diving deeper into more the storytelling element, and I'm not sure what it was like when you were at Marvel, but what was the relationship with the scripts themselves? Obviously, Bob Layton was the writer. Was it in kind of like the Marvel way, or were you guys collaborative and talking through the books themselves? And then also, what was the collaboration like with Randy Elliott? Kind of curious on all the team members that was involved.
Okay. The first of the scripts, I mean, we never discussed what was going to happen. Bob just sent a script, and I just did what I do, which is what I, had been trained to do. Is once the script is in my hand, it is now my story to tell. I can't change the story, but I can tell this story however I feel best to tell it, and that's, how I've approached every script I've ever gotten. So to me, that was no different, whether it was, the old Marvel way where you'd get, 15 paragraphs, and you'd have to break that into, the 22 pages or whatever it was. Or John Byrne, who wrote, when I did Spider-Woman, he just wrote a sentence for every panel. And, some guys like Alan Moore gave me, script this thick with a little... He thumbnailed out, drew the whole book himself, and that's what I got from Alan Moore, and and then guys like Keith who drew actual pages out and wrote in the dialogue in little balloons, and guys like Ron Morris who wrote a more standard comic script with panel one dialogue, but it was pretty much, for me, it was business as usual as far as the script went. Randy was local to me in Syracuse, New York, and he had been an assistant for Wally Wood when Wally Wood was in Syracuse. And he'd been trying to break in, and he had a very old school inking style. He came out, Wally Wood basically trained him, so he had a very old school look to his inks. And with Justice League, I sort of cultivated how I penciled for him to get him, with thinner lines and more fine rendering and not to be so over the top bold. And when I went to Valiant, I asked, them to get him for the inks, and damn glad he agreed and they did it.
Yeah, in fact, I had a conversation not too long ago, and he was praising you for how generous you were in sharing your art with him. Where think typically the breakdown is the penciler gets 2/3 and then the inker gets 1/3. And he said you guys would he was reminiscing on how you guys used to just get together because you guys were like practically neighbors and would break the page in 50-50. And he was just so thankful for that. And I thought that was a kind of a cool memory that he shared with me.
Yeah, I gave him a lot of work to do. And mine could be a little sloppy and it'd look fine, but he didn't have that pleasure. And I liked Randy because he was very malleable. And when I did the first Dark Knight, I had planned to draw it kind of like this, and I got a page and a half done, and Helfer called me yelling at me because I was late. And I'm like, this is the project you've been promising me since I started Justice League, that I could take as much time as I wanted on. What do you mean I'm late? He's like, well, and that fueled our internal battle, and I never worked with him again after that. But I had to switch and repencil it, so I just used a number 2 and I never sharpened it, and that's how I did the whole Legends of the Dark Knight. And I did pages in the car. I mean, I just had to pump it out. And Randy was able to take what I had done and make it look as cool as Legends of the Dark Knight 21, 22, and 23 look coming out. I mean, it was just amazing that he was able to see that in those pencils like that. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, he's a versatile dude.
Legends of the Dark Knight. What issue was this? 21, was it?
21, 22, and 23, yeah.
Yeah, pull it up real quick.
So while he's pulling that up, Bart, I do have a question. So last year at Heroes, you signed a special copy of Turok #1 that had a Jurassic Park acetate on it. Do you recall that? Okay, because Mark
I can't tell you anything I signed this past weekend, let alone last year.
Yeah, Mark from which is Legion of Comics. There, he has it's got the Jurassic Park truck on the deal, and they stapled it extra to the comic, and you signed it. But he also wants to know whether or not you're going to be at Heroes again this year.
Nope, not this year. Hopefully next. I don't like to do any cons 2 years in a row. Seems kind of like too much to me. But
hey, look, when you announced at the last minute, I think it was actually on Comic Art Fans with Bill that you were going to be at Heroes, I squealed like a little schoolgirl. So I quickly got all my stuff together, and
we decided to give them a call and see if they would have us, and they did great for us. Had a great spot, great space, and they accommodated us at the last minute. And my wife and I drove down, I guess the day before, I can't remember, but it was a great show. And I had just found Exo and Turok pages, and a handful. And Dinesh was the first guy I saw, and pretty much the last guy I saw, because he snapped up just about all of them.
I know, so sad.
he's such a hogger.
Yep. No, that was awesome.
Heroes is awesome. I'm actually did book my flights and hotels, so I will be attending this year now. I was able to get that weekend off, and so pretty excited to be there with the fellows. It'll be fun. So here we are, Legends of the Dark Knight. I remember this growing up. I mean, it was also iconic for me personally, and but I actually forgot that you and Randy worked on this together. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I actually had the full final pencil version of that first page that I penciled more like Exo, and it's same layout but drastically different. I've posted them online a couple times together.
Yeah, every time I watch your posting like some old stuff online, I get all excited because I'm thinking you're going to post it to your website. But then I read the description and says, find other pages like this. Or if you're selling it, you say for sale at your website.
Yeah. I've only got a few pages of Dark Knight left. Just a couple Justice League Europe pages.
Because that comic that you did for, it was some kind of sports team with the Hulk and Wolverine. Yeah, I bought that page from you with Wolverine and Hulk on it.
Yeah, that was for Albany Firewolves lacrosse team. They had Ron Mars and I do a comic night. They do Marvel comic nights and lacrosse. The guys all have jerseys that are, this year they were Wolverine style jerseys. Marvel night, and we've done it 2 years in a row now. And they had I filled the room. There were like 300 people at our silly little comic talk, and I show the kids how to draw something, and we talk about how you make comics, and it's a lot of fun. But that's what I did the Hulk and Wolverine for. Yeah, that lasted about 10 seconds online. It's crazy.
So, do you remember when you were working back then? Any major influences on your work as you dove into comics? Were there other guys you were checking out and paying attention to?
Well, I loved Buscema growing up, and Neil Adams did a Batman story in one of those 80-page super spectaculars called Night of the Wolf, and it was a werewolf Batman story. And when I saw that, I think I was 10 when it came out, and that's when I decided I wanted to draw comic books. Seeing that, and I put tracing paper over it and tried to figure out, how it was done, and how he chose the lines and stuff like that. So those are probably my first two biggest comic influences. Although there's a lot of Ross Andrew in my art, if you look at Ross Andrew's stuff.
Okay.
And I didn't really realize what an influence he had on how I pose things and how I do action. And I grew up loving Frazetta and loved his comic stuff. And I got into Byrne when he started on Iron Fist. I thought, wow, this is cool stuff. And I love Byrne stuff there, and that's all that comes to mind right now. Those are the big influences, I guess. And I always liked I'm so bad with names. The guy did Brave and the Bold for years, Jim Aparo.
Jim Aparo, for sure.
Curt Swan's Superman, I still think that's the penultimate Superman for me, anyways.
Yeah, it's so interesting because as you name off a lot of those names, I recognize them, but they were, a generation before me. Because growing up, I definitely read more of the stuff you were working on. Barry Windsor Smith was very active at the time still. The Farlands of the world was that was more the generation. So it's pretty interesting. Even as an art collector myself, I meet the guys who's been collecting for much longer. All the names you named off are typically the stuff that they collect. And then the stuff that we're into now is definitely a little different. So let's dive a little bit into at the time, what were you up to and what do you remember when you were working on this page here? Because to me, this was one of the coolest kind of transformation pages.
I think at this point, I was just struggling to get stuff done. For a long time, I could remember what movie I watched when I did a page or movies, but I don't have that in memory anymore. And I think this time was I doing, what year was this anyways? You guys
93, I think.
3. Yes.
So 93, so I was doing all the toy stuff too at this time.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right. All the Marvel Toy Biz stuff. So I had Toy Biz stuff, Toy Biz figures on, turnarounds on one table and this on another. And I was just crazy trying to get stuff done. Like I say, XO, just drawing that armor. It was a little maddening.
Yeah, it seemed like you were in a zone, huh? You were just you had a workflow and you were in a zone.
Yeah.
Just blasting away.
Yep. And Turok was a treat because you didn't have any armor, but he had so much, stuff on his belts and all his necklaces and dinosaur teeth and stuff. So that was again, a lot more detail to draw. On a motorcycle, joy.
I love it.
I have to say, Bart, when we were reading through EXO, these 2 issues really stood out. I think they're probably 2 of the best issues of EXO.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I definitely had fun drawing it, and I really planned on drawing it from then on. Because one thing I've, always wanted to do is do like 100 issues of a series.
Yeah.
It's never worked out for whatever reason. So this was one I was hoping would be, but I can do anything. Brain took over, and I let it screw me up.
So was the thought to continue on the EXO title, or was it already saying, "Hey, we're fixing to pivot you as you entered"?
I was supposed to do both monthly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I started drawing EXO that I realized I'm having trouble doing EXO monthly.
That would be a lot to do.
Yeah, like I said, instead of saying, "Look, guys, I can't do both," I just said I can do both. And, try and put my head in the sand and just kept trying to pump out pages, but it was just too slow, and they were not happy with me. So.
It's okay. I think we're all young ones, and often, you never know till you put yourself, to the test. And it felt like you were just an ambitious kid with a lot of talent, and you also, wasn't lacking either. You were putting your best foot forward on every page.
For 4 years or 5 years at that point, so I didn't think anything of it, to be honest. And, but EXO was a whole nother nut, and the buildup of it got in my head too. Everybody was so excited for me doing EXO and freaking out over the pages I was turning in, so that put a lot of internal pressure on me that I wasn't great at necessarily compartmentalizing. So
yeah, it's really interesting.
I got to do it better.
Yes, I noticed that too. I felt like, because I was, former artist manager, some of my previous clients and, who are some of my best friends today would confide to me that often, having like a hit record or something that gives a lot of exposure actually doesn't help with the art. It actually adds more pressure and makes you double think yourself, right? Even though the first time when you're like working in a bubble or working in your studio, you put out your best foot forward and you don't know what it is, but when it comes back around, you get that kind of feedback loop. It actually is counterproductive to the process, because now you have so many voices in your head and you're trying to meet those expectations that weren't there in the first place, but now you have to meet them. So
and it's all in your head. I mean, you could do whatever you do, and everybody is going to think the same thing, but that stuff gets in your head, and you can work yourself right into, not being able to work at all, which I have done probably 3 times in my career. Just got in my head so much I couldn't put out another comic page. I could go draw toy crap, but I just couldn't put, a comic page on paper. And, just the burnout.
Yeah. I think, you could tell from your art that you cared a lot about it, right? And so when you care so much about it, and that kind of pressure comes and you have to try to live that expectation, I think it's tough, especially when you're a young man, still exploring your world and understanding your work. I mean, Mark, Legion of Comics, Mark's fantastic on the run. But one of the things that, Mark is a huge fan of is he just read through the whole run of Turok in our last episode. It was, your work in Turok. It really put Valiant on the map. So can you tell us what that was like? Obviously, you did EXO. Who pitched you Turok, and who came to you with Turok, and then what was that process like?
Right from the get-go, he wanted me to do. I think he might have wanted me to do some issues of EXO and then pivot to Turok, and I think I was probably the one that said I can do both. Now that I think about it, but that was always the plan: was get your feet wet on EXO and jump into Turok, because it's going to be big. It's going to be the first chromium cover in the industry. We're going to sell 1 million copies or more. It's going to be huge. Okay. So it was Masarsky's master plan all along.
Oh, so you knew they were going to push that 1 million copies? Like that was not even questioned.
Yeah, they were pretty confident they would. I wasn't as confident as they were, but they had done some great market manipulation, and they built exactly where they wanted to be, and it was smart what they did.
Nice.
They underprinted the first 2 years of everything they did so that things would sell out, create, some hysteria. We can't get it. We can't get it. So their sales just climbed every month, and they just printed like 3,000 less, 5,000 less, and just made them really hard to find. And it just culminated in Turok #1 at $1.7 million.
So we were duped. I don't mind it. It worked out for my childhood to learn a little bit about market speculation.
Yeah, and they didn't know what would happen. They just were like, yeah, let's try this. So I don't know if that's knowledge or not, but I knew about it.
I've got so much chromium in my loan boxes back there, Turok 1 being the majority of it, that I'm just waiting on the chromium market to change, and then I'll be
back up.
I'll cash out like Bart did.
Here it is. Let's show you. This is a little display. So Jason's actually completely nude underneath that. He actually wants to be one with his Turok #1. So Jason, why don't you share the story behind this? What the heck are we looking at?
Well, some people in the online comic community were, doubting of love and stuff, and then they were trying to brag about their Turok collection. So I had to kind of flex a little bit, and put it out there.
So is that all 224 of them?
No, because this was what's the date on that? That's ever how many weeks ago? 2020.
Let's see.
2023.
Yeah, 2023.
So so there's been more added since then, but but at that time that was all of them. My wife thought I was insane because I was like, okay, we're just gonna put all these on top of me, and I want you to take a picture of me. And she's just shaking her head the whole time, But,
That's pretty awesome.
Was this also the first time your children witnessed that their dad is actually a big child?
No. My older one's not so much, but the younger boy, he likes to read, and he goes with me to the Comic Cons when they're more local. So yeah, he's a nerd too, or developing into one. And all my like McFarlane toys and stuff like that I have in the room in there, they generally like to play with them as well. So,
I mean, Bart, well, how does this make you feel? I mean, 30 years passed. Obviously, your impact was felt. In hindsight, like seeing this type of commitment. And I think there's a couple other fellows in the community that also has hundreds of Turok. What goes through your mind when you see a picture like this?
It's kind of humbling. I mean, just to be a part of something that people liked or loved is rare and special. And sitting here working, you never think about it, and then you come on a podcast, you guys are talking about it, and you see a picture like this. It's makes me a little speechless.
Well, Marcus says ball pits are for kids, Turok pits is for adults.
But no, they go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I feel like at Heroes, you're going to be pointing out anybody with a Turok #1 so I can get in on the action.
That's
or
right.
You're just going to keep them for yourself. I don't know.
Well, no, I actually there was another guy that is on the comic side of things, and he indicated that he did not have a Turok 1. So there was a special handoff at a con last year where I gave him his first Turok 1. I mean, I feel privileged. You always remember your first. And
Right.
But as karma would have it, I went to the comic shop there locally and rescued 5 more. And so I think it might have been Bob or somebody else that we were talking to, Bart, but he indicated that this cover was actually supposed to be the first full chromium cover.
Yep.
And misprinting or whatever. So those little dinosaurs on the side are actually part of the promo stuff that you did, right? And they had to reuse it.
Yep. They were like, "Can you draw some dinosaurs?" I'm like, "No." Why don't you do the stuff from the promo ad? They're like, "Oh, okay." Not too much to do, but it was supposed to be full chromium. But I guess the chromium company that did it couldn't get it ready in time. However, the process was they couldn't do a full page cover, so that got bumped to what, XO0 or whatever it was.
Yes.
Be the first Chromium cover.
Yeah, it was.
So, but this was pretty cool and very unique. So
yeah. What were you thinking when you were designing this cover? Like, even just the pose is so iconic.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably did 50 layouts. So I struck on one that I felt was correct and felt real. So yeah, it's covers and pinups I tend to spend the most time on because I hate, unless like the JLE1 cover with the heads and they're looking at you. I've done that cover for multiple companies multiple times, and it's an iconic image, so that works. But usually I don't like to repeat a cover or an image or stuff, which is tough when you've drawn a lot. So I put that pressure on myself to come up with something fresh and hopefully unique and something that stands out as a good cover. And I've never been a big one that cared whether the cover had anything to do with the story or not, as long as it was striking.
Yeah,
it just has to be cool, right?
That was always more important to me than getting some story point in.
Yeah. Well, and nowadays, I'm sure you've noticed this, Bart, too, that there's a lot more homaging of famous covers than there ever has been before.
Yeah.
And they use they use the homage itself, whether or not they did a good homage or not, is irrelevant. But it's an homage to sell the cover. And so this one has been homaged. I know Malibu did one years ago that was kind of a parody of Turok 1, and you did one when they relaunched the Dynamite series that I bought from you at OAX this year. So,
sweet. Yep, that was I was so when Dynamite approached me to do Turok covers for the #1, I'm like, can I do an homage to the first Turok 1 cover? And they're like, yeah, please. So I had a blast. The only thing that struck me about that second Turok, or when Turok was first at Dynamite, was they changed the idea. They had knights bring dinosaurs over from Europe. And I thought, oh, knights, dinosaurs, and Turok, this is going to be a blast. I want to do some, interiors. This will be fun. And like in issue 3 or 4, the knights all left, and it was like,
yeah,
what's going on? But yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and at OAX this year, there were actually 2 Turok ones, this one and the OG one, that were sold. And I know that you got a chance to re-see that cover again before it went to someone's hands.
Yep. Yeah, it was interesting. I probably haven't seen that. I haven't seen that since '93. Probably. I probably sold it as soon as the book came out, and haven't seen it since. So that was pretty cool.
So what was the original art collecting like back then for those buyers? Did they come reach out to you like the next day kind of thing? As soon as the book came out, someone gave you a call and was like, I love that cover.
Or yeah, I guess a lot of guys would get your number and that's how you get a call, or sometimes you'd get a letter if they had your address. And other than that, it was just at shows. But art was so cheap back then.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I did a signing for XO 14 and 15 in California, right when 15 came out, like that week. And God, there were like, I don't know, 4,000 people wrapped around the block. It took like 5 hours to get everybody through the line just with me signing. And they did an online auction of that splash page of XO and Turok from #1. They did an in-house and online auction, and someone online bought that page for like $1,500, and it was all for charity. And that was by far the most I'd ever sold anything for. And that was, I mean, most pages back then went for $30, $40. So it was definitely a different time.
Wow. Back then they were already selling for that much. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was the frenzy of, the early '90s. Those, anything that somebody thought was, special or unique or X-Men or Image stuff, they were just crazy for.
Yeah, look at these. I mean, these pages are amazing. How about the sequential themselves with Torment 1? Any memories as you were diving through these? Did you feel rushed, or was it more so you had a little bit more time to?
I had a lot of pressure because I was still supposed to be doing both monthly.
Oh yeah.
I was just, the pressure I had on myself was crazy, and that's kind of why I put a shell around me, because I just had to, to my mind, I just had to sit and draw and sit and draw and sit and draw and sit and draw, and I mean, things I never wanted to draw when I got in the business were women, motorcycles, and dinosaurs.
Oh my goodness.
And my first job at Marvel was biker chicks. Iron Roads. And then Justice League era, I'm not doing, the Invasion, which is every character in the darn DC universe, and then Justice League Europe. So there's the team book. Oh, I didn't want to do teams. And then I get to, Exo and Turok, and there's motorcycles in it, and there's dinosaurs. I'm like, ugh. But it's comics. You draw what you got to draw. So, and it was fun because who knows what dinosaurs look like. So I just drew them however I wanted. And this was just after, I think, Jurassic Park, 93. I don't know, around that time somewhere. So, most people's memory of dinosaurs are, old stop motion movies and different stuff like that. So there wasn't a lot of creativity in dinosaurs. Certainly not as prevalent as it has come over the last 40 years. But yeah, so I was able to kind of do what I wanted, which I did.
Which was a fresh take on dinosaurs. I mean, these were kind of living, breathing characters on their own, right? They all had their own personalities. And any memories attached to this cover? What were you working on? What were you doing? Like, what was the times like at the time?
I remember I really enjoyed this cover. I liked a lot of my covers were less action oriented and more iconic, so it was nice to do a kind of a scene cover. And again, it's I guess drug lords, and certainly not my favorite place to put superhero stuff, but it was fun having them all, get chewed up by dinosaurs. I can't believe they let me do the bloody neck there on the cover, but
I know, I was saying it's kind of violent for like on the newsstand at the time, right? Like kids are coming in. Can you imagine being a parent like reading this and this kid's getting shot through the neck?
Parents probably thought it was badass.
Wow, this splash is amazing.
Oh, thanks.
So what was kind of the transition like? Because obviously the second half of this issue was Bernard. What was the effort there in coordinating the production of this?
None. They called me and fired me. Actually, I was on that trip in California, and they found out about it, and that's when they fired me.
Wait, you were in California on like a?
Yeah, I was doing signing for Exo 14 and 15.
Oh my gosh. The one with the 4,000 people wrapped around. Oh my gosh!
I got home.
So the highs of the highs was met with the lows of the lows. Rough. So kind of mixed emotions then in this issue. So then, what was the journey from there as you left Valiant? Obviously, you recovered very well with a lot of the body of work that followed.
I think you might be frozen.
Oh, am I frozen?
No,
Bart.
Bart's frozen, actually. Oh, Bart, you're actually frozen.
Uh-oh. Carl, fix it.
Let me see. Let me try to. Oh, I think we just lost some. Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. Like, if you think about it, guys, like from a company perspective, the XO 1450 was like the height of the height, right? Of like even Bart's like presence in space. And then Turok 1 and 2 was like the height of Valiant universe. And for them to let Bart go, I'm kind of curious exactly like what the heck were they thinking on the other side? Like, why would they let their superstar go? This is kind of. For 1 second.
Could have told him he got 4,000 fans who would drop all Valiant books if he got fired.
Strategy.
Yeah, that is crazy because generally, you get fired because, hey, I'm not doing a good job, or we're not selling enough issues. When you're at the height, fresh off the height of Turok 1, you're like, man, you would think you can't do any wrong, right?
Yeah, it's strange. That's typically the kind of, if you're the star in any entertainment venture, there are certain parameters and you're given that, that favor. But I wonder why, what's going on. Oh, his internet went out.
Oh, no.
So he's trying to figure it out right now.
Okay.
All right. So how was it so far, guys? The audience, any questions for Bart? Any thoughts based on our interview thus far? Yeah.
Yeah, so while Bart's getting his internet back up, if you haven't already done so, whether you're watching over on my channel or here on 24/7 Comics, be sure to smash that like button and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. So when videos like this go up, you will be one of the people to know. Also, Carl, if you've got a plug that you want to do for 24/7 Comics, because what is 24/7 Comics?
You know what? Let me show you what 24/7 Comics is with my extra camera that I'm about to add to.
Oh, no.
Stuff.
Carl all the time.
Here we go. At the stage. Boom. Here we go. So this is the Kickstarter that we just wrapped called Bladesmith. This is.
When am I going to get my issues?
It should be delivering this week, actually. So it's going to deliver this week, and it's going to arrive in the store. So I just got my copies, and so this is going to be fun. As usual, we do kind of the higher quality paper, 100-pound exterior, 70-pound interior.
It's going to be a heavy box.
It's always heavier, digital colors. So it's definitely something to look forward to. And, let me point out to you guys, we got barcode ready now for our in-store treatment that's coming soon. And then on the other end is we have Heroes Be Damned, which is our Kickstarter that's about to launch this Wednesday on Kickstarter, and this is with Vincent.
You mean I can support 24/7 Comics and get more cool comics?
More cool comics, and this is our version of like a manga meets American comics, and so definitely check out the campaign. I'll put a link into.
Drop the creators on that book.
Yes, let me do that, and then also we're bringing back Terry Kavanaugh, who was an editor at Marvel, and he's joined 24/7 as our executive editor. And with that said, perfect timing for Bart to return. Hey, Bart, how's it going?
Hey, sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but that internet went out, so I switched to my other internet.
Oh,
all good. We took the time to do some promotional plugs for the channel and for the books. So, all right, let's get back to the conversation. We were just kind of scratching our heads because, obviously, you brought Valiant, the highest exposure they've ever gotten. At the same time, that also kind of speaks to how much of a fandom you had. So why do you think, kind of things went south between yourself and Valiant?
Well, it's all in my head. I overcommitted, and then I went dark and just would send pages in, because I knew they were mad. And I just didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't come clean. So when they saw that I was in California for a week, and not turning in pages, of course, they had just said, screw it.
So they thought you were slacking and traveling, but man, you were promoting them, having all the fans come out. That's really what it was, and it's hard because as an artist, like it's kind of important that you're out there and like meeting fans, and so it's unfortunate to hear that there was that misunderstanding. So does this issue bring?
But if I had been upfront when I started, it all would have been fine. But I just kept. I can do it. I can do the 2 books, and just kind of got lost in my own head. So I never blamed them at all for it. It was all on me.
Yeah, understandable. And Bernard definitely kind of mimic a lot of your look and feel throughout the rest of the issue. Does it bring kind of mixed feelings when you see these pages in this issue, based on the history of what was happening at the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's bittersweet. Like I said, I earned getting canned, and but it would have been nice to do both of those books for a few years. I could have built up to that, knowing what I learned from that experience, but no, I messed that one up. That's on me. And, I can't be too upset about it because I did it to myself. So.
Well, at least you didn't burn the bridge down because, like I said earlier, you ended up coming back to Valiant later on. But so was it from Valiant that you went to CrossGen?
No, I went to CrossGen. I was back at DC. Right? No,
Okay.
I was at Marvel. I was at Marvel doing Spider-Woman, and yeah, so that's where I went to CrossGen from, was Valiant, or was Marvel. Yeah.
You did a couple of books with them, right? I know you did the first, and then
Yep.
you worked on The Path, and I think The Way of the Rat as well, too.
No, I didn't do Way of the Rat. That was Jeff
No?
Johnson.
Oh, okay. My bad. I know I was reading both of those at the time.
And I love that whole studio life.
Hmm.
You were only required to do 10 issues a year, a page a day, 5 pages a week, come into work at 8 or 9 in the morning. I was always, the first few months on The Path, I think I worked some Saturdays, but pretty much it was a page a day. A lot of times I was out. I was done at 3 by 3 with my page. So, but then I was almost from the get-go, I was involved in the art direction and running the studio. So it didn't last long. Like the Path pages, I ended up drawing the Path on, doing my pencils on each spread on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
Wow.
And I would do it in marker. So I'll had all the blacks and everything in it and white out. And basically I would probably stay home 2 mornings a week and do a spread in the morning. So I would get up at 6 or something and try to get into work by 11 with a finished spread that they would scan and print out to size on 11 by 17 paper and blue line for mark to ink. And that's how I did most of the Path. First issue, I didn't do it that way. The first issue was a lot of work.
This is awesome. I've never seen this before.
Really? Oh man, this book was great.
Woo! Beautiful.
There's the French company, I can't think of the name of them, did a hardcover graphic novel version of the Path, but they printed each spread on a single page of paper. So the book's long and vertical, so you open it this way. That was gorgeous.
Man, the Europeans get all the cool collected editions.
Damn, look at this page here. This is awesome.
Yeah, Carl, I'm telling you, this book was awesome.
Wow. So how did it feel like being at CrossGen then? Were you one of the artists that they flew to Florida, kind of put up and was working in the bullpen at the time? So it was totally different. So you actually did get to experience the bullpen then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Heck, I ran that bullpen. But,
oh, wow.
Awesome. Michelle laughed.
So is that when you went to the smaller page size?
Nope, I did that on the second Valiant run.
Yeah, this is This is from XO 57. So
Yeah.
I don't get as big of a Bart Sears goodness.
Is that the smaller page? Oh yeah, that's a smaller page.
Yeah, and that was I think I just did breakdowns on that issue too. That one you were just holding up.
Wow.
But the path was a blast, and I just did whatever I wanted for the covers, which was so much fun. All the covers were just so cool. I loved it.
So how long was this run for on the path?
I did, I think, 10 issues.
Cross Jam, look at that. That's a great cover too. Okay, so Jason, you might have to lead us on this one then. When was Bart's return to Valiant? What issue?
Earthquake. Or should I do Birthquake?
Birthquake. Yeah, Birthquake was one of the crossover events. And so was Birthquake your first trip back into the XO realm? Yep. So is that issue 44?
Yep.
44, okay. Let's go to that. Issue 44.
I did 44 and 45, and they went bi-weekly, right? Every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm never a fan of.
Woo! What was it like coming back to this?
Much better. Wow. I was always ahead, never missed a deadline.
Nice.
Wow. But I knew what to do. I learned from that first experience, and not immediately, but that was the gelling. Whenever I took a job, that I would say, I'll get to 5 pages a week, but my first week I'm going to do 1 or 2 pages. My second week I'll do 2 or 3. Then I'll do 3 to 4, and then I'll be 5 pages forever. No problem. It's just how my brain works. Getting into it. If I jump into a job thinking I have to do 5 pages that first week, I'm going to be behind forever and stressed out constantly, which is my experience in comics pretty much up until I had that realization. So when I went back and I talked to Misarsky, I was like, look, this is how it's got to be. I learned a lot, and this is how it works. He's like, cool, let's do it.
So, Jason, you might have to lead us here because we haven't gotten here yet in our TLDR reading. So, what was is this still considered VH1 or?
Yeah. This is still XO Volume 1. So this would, go on for whatever. How many was 68 issues? Of XO.
As an aside, when we were reading XO, we didn't review a specific number of issues, and I was feeling like an overachiever at the time, and I read all of Volume 1. So,
oh, wow, okay,
yeah. So I read these.
I know that Bart. Of course, you've worked with Ron Mars before. Was this your first time working with Ray on inks?
Nope. I don't know. No, Ray inked some stuff at DC, some Eclipso stuff.
Okay.
He was a student of mine when I taught the Q-Word school, and he got into comics and we became a friend. So I hooked him up on some DC work, and then he went on to do Robin for years at DC and a bunch of other stuff. But he's one of the go-to guys when you needed somebody. And but this is also my color studio. When because in somewhere in between these 2 years, I did my first ominous press company, and I built a studio basically to do toy package art. That's a whole other story, but they colored the comics for my the few that I was able to do for Ominous Press, and then went right from that into Valiant. And Valiant hired them. They did a bunch of Valiant books, not just XO, and they did Acclaim books. I guess it was Acclaim all at this point. And they did a bunch of Acclaim books, and for a long time after I was let go when that crashed.
So this was technically Acclaim, but they had not relaunched all the titles yet. So
Got it. Okay, so it was a claim takeover. Bob was in charge.
Big reshuffling of stuff, and I remember I talked Masarsky into relaunching the Exo story here, because the first script he sent me was like the next issue on their run, and I'm like, why are you doing Birthquake and changing nothing? I thought the whole purpose of Birthquake was to breathe life into, your properties, to, get more eyes on them and all this stuff. And Sarsky's like, you're right, you got to rewrite this. And that's how I got Ron in to write it.
It's cool.
And, he immediately killed off most of the main characters, which I don't think Bob liked very much, but.
So at this point, you had finished CrossGen and you moved back to Valiant. Now, was there?
No, this is before CrossGen.
Oh, that's before CrossGen. Okay.
Yeah.
We did this and then went back to CrossGen. Got it.
Yeah. We did this, went to Marvel. Marvel, wait.
Wow. Look at these flashes at the end. Wow. What a beast.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so, at what point?
I love those copper-looking guys. That was fun designing them. That was a blast.
At what point did Andy Smith, was he just like doing fill-ins?
They wanted 2 books a month. And I was like, well, I'm not doing 2 books a month. Smart.
Right.
And they wanted somebody so that the style wouldn't look too different.
Right.
Andy had been a student of mine and, ended up drawing a lot like me. And so they were like, well, why don't we hire Andy to do the other issues, and it won't be a stark, stylistic change when people from issue to issue, month to month.
Yeah, Carl, one of those issues, Master Dark, will steal the Exo armor.
Yep.
And so it's pretty dope.
Was that the issue I drew with Master Dark in it?
I think so. Yeah.
Is it here?
Okay.
It's I know he's in 63s on the cover.
Yeah, it's like right toward the end of the run.
Yeah.
So Ray actually has several of these pages here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's cool. 63. Let's jump there. I want to see Master Dark wearing the armor.
Yeah, there's Ken.
Okay, 60.
Yep, 63. There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
So why does he get the armor? Like, what happened?
He stole it. That's 65.
65.
Oh my gosh.
So Bart, how involved were you in? That's weird. Even though it's 63, I guess it says 61.
There you go.
That was
Like, how invested were you in the stories at the time? Now that
at this point, not at all, because I knew I was being worked to be fired. So.
Oh no.
Well, they had oversold Valiant's value to Acclaim, and Acclaim was not happy in the least. So they were trying to shed all the contracts. So Masarsky did a game of shell game with me, which I had no chance of winning. And he manipulated, because there were weeks I had nothing to do, right? But they had to pay me contractually. And then there was something in the contract that he was trying to get me to, oh yeah, there he is in the arm. I remember drawing that cover. He was trying to get me to do a couple of issues free because they'd overpaid me. I don't know, it was weird. Or I could just quit. So I was like, well, guess what I'm doing?
It's so strange back then. I mean, was that a thing? Because you were saying like you had an 8-year DC contract. So, like you could sign like a 10-year like.
Yeah, I had a 10-year exclusive.
Wow.
We had 8 years left on it. Well, I was one of the few guys that could do a monthly. That was great when miniseries were being popular. And, Mignola and all those guys were just doing a miniseries or 2 a year, four issues, maybe 6 issues a year, and making way more money than I was doing a monthly. And I was rather annoyed by that. And I wanted them to put me on special projects, and they just wouldn't. And that's mostly the reason I left, was because I wanted to do cool books rather than just be the guy that could do the, whatever, like Eclipso Monthly was, I thought, a joke. I didn't, the drug, I wanted to do superheroes. So why are you giving me stupid drug lords?
Zen's
Book as bloody as I possibly could. I was really like, there's going to be blood and guts everywhere.
The way we like it.
You got Zen in the chat. Shout out Zen. The Path is a master class in storytelling. I feel like I need to jump into the Path. I've never read it before. It was awesome.
It was a good one.
Story. It's pretty good.
All right. So Bart, let's talk about modern day. I mean, any other thing I missed, fellas, as far as the Valiant days go?
Well, he's still selling exo covers, right? Because going into the Dinesh era and beyond, I mean, you're still doing a cover. Even that last run, that first one that was up on the IG is a cover you did for them, right?
Let's see.
Did that one ever get released or no?
Which one? This one?
The one with multiple different faces. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yep. I just printed it. It was Exo Unconquered.
This one? Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a cover for Exo Unconquered. That was weird because Valiant hired me like, I don't remember the dates, but like, let's say 4 years ago to do that cover. And then I didn't hear from them ever. And I did a whole different layout that they bought, and they said, well, we'll get in touch with you when we want you to pull the trigger. I'm like, okay. Didn't hear from them for like 2 years. And then they were like, we want that cover. We want it now. I'm like, okay, but I'm just going to do something else because I've been looking at that layout on my wall for years and I'm bored. So I just did this and sent it in. And they were like, oh, that's great. So that is how that came about.
Yeah, I always love this promo piece that you did.
That's a good
Did you
one.
ever print that as a promo? I can't remember. I don't remember. Like maybe just in a comic or something.
I don't know. Yeah, I've seen it before, and I always thought that was such a cool piece. Okay, and then obviously one of the things you're also very known for is Brute and Babes, and for those of you guys who are tuning in today, there's actually a Kickstarter coming out, and it's heavily kind of, maybe we could talk a little bit more about how Brutes and Babes came about, and then maybe then we could parlay into this kind of evolution into kind of drawing powerful heroes that you have on Kickstarter.
Well, I was introduced to Gareb through Mark McNabb, who was a guy I went to the Kubert school with, and who ended up running the Kubert. They had their own design and graphics firm, and he ended up running that. And I don't know if he frequented Gareb's shop, because Gareb had a comic shop, or if Gareb called the Kubert school, in the graphics department to see how do I put a magazine together when he was starting Wizard. And he introduced me to Gareb pretty early on, and I started doing covers for him, and they were big into the wizard thing, so I drew a bunch of little wizards and different wizard stuff for him. And one day he called me and asked if I would do a drawing column for the book, and I said sure. And he's like, well, just come up with something, whatever you do is fine. And I came up with Brutes and Babes, and just started doing that, and did, I don't know, 3 years of it or something like that. So a lot of little tutorials. Started at 2 pages, and I think it got up to 8 pages at one point, as it was always one of their most popular sections.
Yeah, extremely memorable. I remember I attempted to draw inspired by those Brutes and Babes. Obviously, I did not continue that side of my venture, but I think amongst artists, when people talk about Wizards, if they don't talk about the covers, the second they would often mention is Brutes and Babes. Like, oh, yeah, Brutes and Babes, right? And it's kind of so.
I mean, I was so lucky to get that opportunity, and I've heard from a lot of pros in the industry that said thank you for Brutes and Babes. I didn't have any idea what I was doing, and that just gave me some interest in, or some insight into how to draw comics and how to put a figure together, and how to draw anatomy and how to tell a story. So it's been pretty cool. And I can't tell you how many times I heard, fans and pros tell me that they cut out all of the Brutes and Babes and stapled them together so they just had one book of all the drawing tips and information. And, I've heard that 2,000 times easy.
Awesome.
That's cool.
So what can we expect from Brutes and Babes Part 3?
Well, Part 3 is a little different. It's just all involves drawing a single splash page and everything
Nice.
that goes into drawing one single splash page of a comic book. And it was originally a book I did for Sal Cortuccio Productions back in the late 90s. And I'm giving it kind of the same treatment I gave the Brutes and Babes stuff. Is I'm expanding it, adding to it, and updating it, rewriting probably a lot of that one for number 3 as I work on, what number 4 is going to be in. So, or what's going to be in number 4. So, yeah, it's pretty fun stuff. I always liked teaching from the Huber School when I taught there, and that was the same time I started doing Brutes and Babes. And I've had private students and a lot of, I don't want to say private instruction, but a lot of semi-mentoring for people over the decades. So teaching's fun. I find it difficult, but it's fun. I like the classroom experience where people can ask questions, because my brain starts clicking then. Because you sit and you draw for so long, I don't even think about what I do 90% of the time. You just sit and do it, and it gets done. You're like, yeah, cool. But you don't think about the reasons you're making all these decisions. If you do it for so long, it's just second nature. Like drawing figures. I don't draw block and cube figures. I don't. Sometimes I draw a finished figure because it's in my head so clearly. All those steps of underdrawing and structure are in my brain, so there's a lot of times I don't need to do it on the page. I can just do it much faster just by doing the finished or near finished art. So, but when you have a problem, you fall back on those steps, and I'll construct the figure and build it right. If I'm having a lot of trouble with one for whatever reason. So.
Yeah. No, in fact, Bart, I think rather you know it or not, intentionally or unintentionally, you're a father to a generation of artists, because millions of copies of Wizards were distributed, and your Brutes and Babes were there as kind of like, for the most part, most comic fans' first exposure to learning how to draw comics. So it's pretty damn cool. So folks, I left the link for Brutes and Babes Part 3 into our chat, so make sure you click through. And just what I did here, I just click save. And so just click save, because every follower does help with the algorithms for when they launch. So please, definitely give Bart a follow here.
Please.
Yes. It's funny, Marcus even mentioned earlier, like how many people have come up to Bart to tell them they were inspired by Brutes and Babes?
A lot. A whole lot. Every show, it's a constant in my life since Wizard hit the stands, basically.
Yeah.
It's just in the recent years, because I didn't do conventions after CrossGen for quite a while. I do one or two here and there, but very rarely. And then I started again like 2018 or something doing conventions, and that's when I really noticed how many people were into Brutes and Babes and who loved Wizard Magazine and all that stuff. It became, I don't know if it was just the nostalgia of it, enough time had passed that people really started missing it even more. But that's why I really noticed that Brutes and Babes had such a big impact on so many fans and creators. That's pretty crazy. And
so Bart, you're still a creative powerhouse today, and we're so honored by you making time to do this today. But yeah, I love to jump in and just ask, kind of to close out and land the plane. What are your top 5 most memorable covers, and why?
Let's see. Turok 1.
Yep.
Oh, geez. I'm trying to think of any covers I've done.
So many.
For the second Ominous Press company, which I'm no longer affiliated with, I did a connected 8-panel cover that was double spread covers that interconnected into one huge image.
Wow.
And I'm going to frame that on my wall one day, but I don't know. That's going to cost a fortune. So that was pretty cool. All the Path covers I really enjoyed. I did a lot of Blade covers I thought were really, really cool. Almost every cover I did for Blade I like, and I did a ton. I did some great EXO covers, that EXO 14 cover.
Yep.
Bob did an awesome job inking that. I mean, that's so cool. There was a book I did for a role-playing game company called Deadlands that was called Death Was Silent. Mute cowboy fighting pod people. It's a mix of sorcery and Western themes. And the cover I did for that I always liked. I guess those are what stand out to me.
Okay, that's great.
The covers for Eclipse of the Darkness Within were pretty good too. I don't know. There's a lot. I can't even think.
Yeah, I know. I think I actually
feel
like, yeah, those are all good ones. And as I interact with you, and I'm sure the guys can attest, I feel like you being back in the circuit and doing work, I think there's just so much more we all look forward to seeing. So
I just did a new cover for Conan.
Oh, nice.
The Titan people. So hopefully I'll be doing a bunch more Conan stuff. So see how
is that Conan cover public yet? Because I have it on my desktop from.
I don't know. Is it public yet, Michelle?
No, not yet.
No, not yet. It will be in the Bill Cox sale I have coming up.
Okay.
June.
Good to know.
So
I'm taking a note.
Yeah, actually, there was something really cool that you shared with me, and I think we'll kind of land the show with this. Since I can't show that Conan thing, you did show me this, which was freaking awesome.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell the fellas what this is?
Well, before I crashed and burned at Valiant, I was supposed to do Valiant's part of the Deathmate crossover with Image.
Wow.
And that was the first piece I had started penciling and inking, which I was working on while I was doing EXO and Turok. And so that never came to be, which would have been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
So do you still own that or no?
No.
Oh, okay. I know where it's
Nope.
at.
So no, I mean, I can attest. I mean, even your story, Bart, as much as I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I could definitely relate to the different crash and burns and ups and downs. But you're a phoenix rising, always coming back stronger. And so I think
Try, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's the trials and errors that makes you stronger. And often some of the folks get so high they fall, they can never come back.
Yeah.
But you've been able to come back over and over again, just visiting your body of work. So I'm glad that you allowed us, the team at TLDR, to go through your journey with you and sharing this with the world. And really appreciate it. Any other thoughts, or as we kind of literally just went through your life, any thoughts to close us out?
I think the best stuff's ahead. So
yeah,
Awesome.
Agree. Excited, folks. So guys, as Bart said it, the best stuff is ahead. So thanks for tuning in. And Bart, please stay on. We got to upload our the rest of our show. And everyone else, we'll see you guys at the next time. And please subscribe, like, and comment below for more Valiant TLDR coming soon.
thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Everyone.